2024's Street Trash is a kind of remake, sort of sequel to, and semi-reimagining of the 1987 cult classic of the same name. I only recently watched the original film. In fact, it was in preparation for watching this newest reimagining, so I've never exactly been a lifelong fan, but I gotta say the original film definitely became one of my favorites. I adored its grimy and filthy aesthetic, its offensive no fucks given style of humor, and its goopy, gross, and colorful practical effects. 87 Street Trash is a renegade, no budget film made solely with the intent to be as vile as possible and to piss off as many people as it can. And it succeeds, and it's wildly entertaining, even if what you're watching is pretty messed up by every conceivable standard. So, how does the 2024 version stack up against it? Spoiler warning for both films. You've been warned. For those not in the know, both movies are basically about the same thing, a type of alcohol called Viper that when drunk causes a person to effectively start melting into a wide array of colorful goop. The main characters of both films are homeless people. The original film's plot was pretty non-existent, with characters just sort of meandering about and occasionally drinking this melty alcohol. There was a through line about a Vietnam veteran hobo who, throughout the course of the film, slowly goes crazy and attempts to take control of the hobo camp. But that really wasn't much of a concern for this original film. It was kinda just following the day-to-day lives of the homeless, seeing what shenanigans they got up to, and then watching as they periodically drank the Viper. It was nothing to really write home about, but it was enough for what it was. 2024's entry, by contrast, has a much more clear and prevalent plot. The film keeps elements of the original, the homeless main cast of characters, and the Viper, but completely reinvents itself. Set in the near future, the film takes place in South America, under a dystopian government who plan to use the Viper as part of a plot to exterminate all of the homeless population. Our characters take a more active role in the story, attempting to stop them once they discover the sinister scheme. It makes for quite a jarring difference between the two, going from a film with no real story to a film that actively attempts to tell one. I think both succeed in what they are setting out to do. The story in Street Trash 2024 is nothing to write home about, but straight up remaking the original wouldn't work as well today. The filmmakers had to do something different, and I'm glad they took this big swing. The biggest, most obvious difference between both movies is that 2024's entry has a noticeably higher budget than the original. An increase in budget would typically be something in a movie's favor, but in this particular instance, it also harms the 2024 entry. See, because the original was made for practically nothing, it allowed the movie to provide a real, unfiltered look at the lives of the homeless in America at the time. It wasn't exactly social commentary, but the filth and squalor many of the time lived in was accurately portrayed. 2024's version, with its higher budget, loses that grimy and filthy feel that I love so much about the original. Everything feels very polished in this entry, and when it attempts to be filthy, it comes off as very artificial. The film has a lot of wide action scenes that just weren't present in the 80s version, especially towards its final act. But the increase in budget is a big contributing factor towards what is probably the highlight of this film, that being the practical effects. I'm not sure I can show any of it, but they are quite disgusting. The original film gained its cult following partially due to its uniquely colorful practical effects, which still hold up reasonably well today. But obviously, increasing the budget with this new entry means the new practical effects will look better than the original, and they do. They still maintain that colorful look that was so prevalent in 80s street trash, but they're all the more disgusting. Outside of the actual Viper melting effects, it also features numerous other gross practical effects, especially when it comes to the third act, in which our main characters assault a government stronghold where the Viper gas is being tested. There's a lot of gory gunshot effects and a particularly gruesome chainsaw related death. If you're a gorehound like myself, this entry is worth watching solely for that. Street Trash 2024's biggest weakness by far is its characters. Now, the characters in the original were barely anything to talk about, but they felt like real homeless people. There was a certain fun charm to the fact that they were just walking caricatures of sleazeball homeless. There was obviously a bit of embellishment in regards to just how slimy they were, but for the most part they felt like real people living in a real place. The 2024 entry's characters lack this charm. It attempts to replicate the original's filthy sense of humor, but it doesn't quite work. The characters are all quirky oddballs who have humor straight out of your average adult animated show. They're overly quirky and overly goofy, to the point that they don't feel like real people. One of the characters even has a little blue companion that, because he is constantly high, only he can see. This little guy has a Deadpool style of humor, where he just says a funny word, like cock, and expects you to laugh purely at that, because look, he said a funny. The humor in this film, for the most part, falls flat on its face, and pretty much all the characters are being silly like this. It makes the scenes that the film wants you to laugh at feel painfully unfunny. Though I will say, there's a funny bit towards the end where one of our main characters becomes so high he can't feel gunshot wounds and is shot point blank and shrugs it off as nothing. That part did make me laugh. So was this entry better than the original? The answer is no, but that's not to say it's in any way a bad film. Fans of the original will most likely enjoy this. The filmmakers clearly had a lot of love for that first film and understand what people wanted out of this, which was goopy, gory practical effects. And on that front, it certainly delivers. I really respect how different they went with this kind of reboot, though, even going so far as to turn the Viper from an alcoholic liquid into a poisonous gas. It really is the characters and the movie's poor attempt at humor that drag it down for me. But overall, I did like this newest entry. I just didn't feel like it fully lives up to the original. See you all in the next one. Cheers.